Hello and welcome to Eye on Oakland. I'm Chuck Moss, your host. And we've got a great guest, got a great show. We have Terry Connelly, who's the board chair of the Pontiac Transportation Museum. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So what is the Pontiac Transportation Museum?
Pretty new thing on the Oakland County scene, but we opened in May of 24. And it's basically all about the legacy of wheeled vehicle transportation in the Pontiac area, which is very considerable. In fact, it's way deeper than most people realize in this area.
Well, now for Pontiac, we know about Detroit, got the Henry Ford Museum. I think they got the PCAT plant now.
Right.
But Pontiac, tell me, what's Pontiac? What is Pontiac's role?
So people obviously know the Pontiac brand, and pretty storied brand in the industry, now defunct, obviously. But the GMC brand also started in Pontiac. The Oakland brand started in Pontiac. And it turns out there's 47 companies, no less than 47 companies that did wheeled vehicles in Pontiac, Michigan, inside a relatively small city. So it's an enormous legacy, and it's everything from motorized bicycles to amphibious trucks, literally, and everything in between. Incredible breadth.
So, we know Pontiac means... we think of the Pontiac cars. Those people my age. In fact, I remember we had an orange Pontiac Ventura around about 1978, 79.
Yeah.
That was a hot car. But Pontiac was not just, an appendage of the Detroit. Pontiac was a place of its own.
Yeah, in fact, I think many of the people with GM history would tell you that because Pontiac was away from Detroit and maybe away from the eyesight of some of the GM leaders, they were actually kind of a rogue brand, and they did what they wanted to do. And folks like John DeLorean took great advantage of being remote from the GM leadership.
Yeah, he did that. It's terrible. After this company, I could have bought a DeLorean for like $20,000, which was a lot back in 80
Right.
whatever. But oh well, mine wouldn't go back to the future, so that's
Yeah.
good. Great. So Pontiac and it's not just general. There was an Oakland brand of car.
Yeah, so the Pontiac history really starts with carriages. In fact, I'll take a diversion and tell you that,
Like Flint.
right, exactly like Flint. Between Pontiac and Flint, Pontiac was kind of earlier on the scene than Flint. There were 25% of the carriages in the whole United States built between those two cities. And most people have no understanding of the reasons for why, but in the mid-1800s, people were coming from Europe in droves, and they came to Ellis Island, they went up the Hudson, they came across the Erie Canal, they got on a boat in Buffalo, and importantly, they basically landed in Detroit. And they were headed to Wisconsin, Minnesota, et cetera. But this is like 2,100 people a day coming into Detroit, is what the documentation says. And so when they got off that boat, the first thing they needed was a carriage. And so, Pontiac and Flint were huge in carriages. So the carriage industry is what seeded the automotive industry, because all those suppliers of carriage parts, forgings, bearings, wheels, et cetera, and wood bodies had learned to make all this stuff. And once somebody came up with an internal combustion engine that worked, all of a sudden Detroit was poised for taking off in the auto industry.
And so, just put a motor on a carriage, like
Basically, if you look at the early...
horseless carriage.
Exactly. If you look at the early cars, they look like a carriage. In fact, we have people come to the museum that can't tell the difference between a late model carriage and a car, and they're asking which one was a horse and which one was a motorized thing.
Well, the ones I think the big long things, the big long boards with a a horse in them. But
Right.
So the horseless carriage. So the Flint, of course, we know the history of Flint and its meteoric rise and unfortunately its fall. Pontiac though was right in there pitching with Detroit and Flint as well.
Yeah. So the way Pontiac developed economically. 3/4 of the people in the turn of the century were employed in either the carriage business or the fledgling auto business. 3/4 of the adult population in Pontiac. And if you look at the decade from 1910, decades plural, from 1910 to 1930, the growth in Pontiac was just incredible. And to the point where GM had to buy up all the hotels and make dormitories for workers because there's no housing. People were just migrating in there like crazy.
Because that's where the jobs were.
Yeah, arguably it was the Silicon Valley of the whole United States.
Well, it's definitely
in
the
those
Silicon Valley.
Those 2 decades were just tremendous growth.
Yes, and but so Pontiac, like you said, it started with the carriages, which had the vehicle infrastructure. And once you figured out how to put the internal combustion engine on, do we know who did that or who got started with
Well,
that?
so as an example, the Pontiac Buggy Company was one of the more successful carriage manufacturers. Sat right at the corner of Baldwin and Cesar Chavez for people that know Pontiac.
And what was Cesar Chavez before it was Cesar Chavez?
It was Dixie Highway.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the Pontiac Buggy Company saw the handwriting on the wall. In 1907, a guy named Ed Murphy incorporates Oakland Motor Company, which was immediately successful to the point where Billy Durant of GM bought Oakland Motor Company in 1909, and it became Oakland division of GM.
Billy Durant, of course, was a lunatic. He was like a degenerate gambler and a super salesman, and he decided it would be as if someone said, "I want all before antitrust that all these companies should belong to one big overarching company, mine," and he called it General Motors.
Yeah,
the great Billy Durant.
You got that pretty straight, and he got kicked out of GM
twice.
Twice, yeah. Once in the late teens, and then when Alfred Sloan came to GM, pretty controlling, respectable businessman, he kicked Durant out a second time too.
And we know what happened. My understanding is that Billy Durant then found this old race car driver who had a product by the name of Louis Chevrolet, and took Chevrolet, built it up, and got the company back. That must have been I'd like to be a fly on the wall when Billy Durant went back to the General Motors headquarters building he had built, back to his old office, and called Alfred P. Sloan in.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, definitely a little bit of retribution. And you got your history very straight, Chuck.
Well, family stuff. But yes, excellent. Well, now, they made lots of different cars. And not like what kinds of cars? I know there was transit and buses. What all?
Yes. For instance, buses. The GMC brand of GM came from Rapid Truck. And the Rapid Truck Company had started and built very successfully in the commercial truck industry. Billy Durant again bought Rapid Truck, turned it into GMC,
which is General Motors.
Yeah, General Motors Company was
Right.
the original. There's some urban legend about that being Grabowski Motor Company. The Grabowskis were the ones that started Rapid, but that's not really true. That's not.
Too bad. That would be kind of cool. I'm driving. You're driving a Pontiac. I'm driving an Oldsmobile. You're driving a Grabowski. That would be a cool name, actually.
And we actually have the only Grabowski in the world.
What?
So one of the Grabowski brothers, after Durant bought them out, decided he was going to compete in the truck business with a thing that he called the Grabowski Power Wagon.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
And there's only one of those known to exist, and it's in our museum. And it actually runs and drives, and about last fall it went 200 miles, believe it or not, in this 1911 Grabowski Power Wagon.
A Grabowski. I think that's fabulous. I'd love to see the nameplate on the car.
Yeah.
God, that's fabulous. All right, good. So how many? You made transit. They made buses. What did they make?
Yes. So the bus industry was basically, I'll say, more or less born in Pontiac. As early as the Rapid Truck Company built what they called sightseeing buses as early as 1908, 1909. But then Pontiac actually built 80% of transit buses in the United States for about 40 years.
In Pontiac.
Now, unfortunately, the Department of Justice took exception to 80% market share.
Yeah.
And so took GM to court. It took about a decade, but they more or less forced GM to sell off the bus business.
Yeah.
So,
Who makes them now?
well,
Foreign competition. Nice job.
yeah.
Nice job, government.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
But the Rosa Parks bus, for instance, was built in Pontiac. And you'll see, if you go to almost any old bus, as you walk in, you'll see on the step a nameplate that says built in Pontiac.
The school buses that I took, I was up in Midland, it's school bus, they were all built in Pontiac.
Yeah.
And where in Pontiac would that have been?
The building actually still exists. So it's on the south side of South Boulevard.
All right.
The most of South Boulevard is a UWM, United Wholesale Mortgage, basically campus now.
Okay.
But there's one building that still exists from the truck plant. Mahindra actually has an operation there today and assembles a wheeled vehicle, interestingly enough, in that same building.
Really? What's it called?
The Mahindra Roxor. And they also build a full-size tractor in the same plant. When I say build it, I'll say that's a loose description. In the industry, we call it a complete knockdown. It comes from India in boxes, basically,
Okay.
and they put it back together.
So it's like
in
IKEA. You get all the parts and you have to put it all together.
The consumer doesn't, but they put it back together in the factory.
That's a thought. I'll get a big box from IKEA, only you have to put it together.
Right.
And this is the motor, and of course they've If you get me talking about IKEA, we'll be out all day. I understand there was also, you've got there's something called a Vixen. What kind of a name is that for a car? A Vixen.
So there were two motorhomes built in Pontiac of significance. The most known is the GMC motorhome, which went from 1973 to 1978. Very advanced piece of technology for 1973. Fiberglass and aluminum body, front-wheel drive, really remarkable vehicle. In fact, 65% of them are still on the road at 50 years.
I would think those would be weird years to be making a vehicle like that, because you had the first energy crisis in '73, right. And then all that stuff went off the road, and then 78, '79, you had the second one. But they made them all through there.
Yeah, and you're kind of right that it was up against the energy crisis. It was a more efficient motorhome than others.
And the Winnebago.
Yeah, and the Vixen was then maybe particularly interesting thing because it's a compact motorhome. They were built basically right next door to the Silverdome. There were only about 580 of them built. A guy named Bill Collins, who had been a very successful technical guy at Pontiac Motor Division, and did all the, I'll say, technical handiwork for John DeLorean. In fact, when DeLorean started DeLorean Motor Company, guess who he hired to be his chief engineer? It was Bill Collins. And Bill Collins, as told to me, kind of said, and then I saw the books and what was going on at DeLorean Motor Company, and I got the heck out of there. And he started the Vixen Motor Company in Pontiac.
So why call it Vixen? I mean, that's an interesting name.
Yeah, I'm sure his concept. I never talked to him about that. And unfortunately, he passed. Fascinating guy. Passed away about 2 years ago.
I mean, no offense, but it's like
it's a very light, small motorhome. It handled way better than the big motorhomes. Got way better fuel economy and so forth. So I'm sure that was part of his thinking. I don't know.
Vixen. It's like the Chevy Nova, which my parents had one back in the old days, the Nova, is that nobody thought that when you marketed it worldwide, Nova means it doesn't go in Spanish.
Right.
And they had to change, I guess, the marketing of it in Latin America.
Right.
But Nova, I was like that. My parents' one actually went pretty well. So they made trucks and they made buses. Now, what about trucks? Did they make trucks there?
Well, absolutely. So on the plants on the south side of Pontiac, there were 3 GMC assembly plants on the south side of Pontiac. They made light-duty trucks, which is what we know today as pickups and utilities. They made a lot of medium-duty trucks, which is the industry sort of sees those as maybe 1.5 ton to 10 ton-ish, that size vehicle. And then they made heavy trucks, which are 18-wheelers, 18-wheeler trailers, et cetera.
All in Pontiac.
All in Pontiac.
To think of Pontiac, I mean, you think obviously Detroit, think of Flint, think of Pontiac. Pontiac was the center.
Yeah. The between the truck plants and the Pontiac Motor Division home plant, at one point GM employed about 48,000 people in Pontiac. Just incredible employment.
48,000 people in Pontiac. And Pontiac, of course, was a center of the auto industry.
Arguably. Now, I've had the fortune of being around the world in all these auto centers around the world because I had a long engineering career. And other than Detroit itself, I don't think there's any other city that has as much breadth of product as what Pontiac did.
Oh, I know some people are going to want to get a fist fight you from Flint, but that's okay. We're going to take a break here. We're talking with Terry Connelly, who is the board chair of the Pontiac Transportation Museum, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about the museum. All right, don't go away. We'll be right back here on Eye on Oakland.
Bloomfield Township Senior Services promotes wellness and strengthens the community through social connections, fitness classes, aquatics, day trips, and more. Our staff is here to serve you, offering lifelong learning and interactive opportunities for residents age 50 and above. Invest in your vitality with us. Follow us to learn more and stay up to date. We look forward to meeting you.
Welcome back to Eye on Oakland. I'm Chuck Moss, your host, and we're talking with Terry Connelly, who's board chair of the Pontiac Transportation Museum. And we've been having a great conversation about Pontiac's history and Pontiac's place in the auto industry, which is considerable. Now you have the Transportation Museum. So what's at the Let's talk about the museum. What's there?
Right now, 50 cars and trucks, about 50 cars and trucks
50?
on display, yes.
Yay.
And it's in what was formerly an elementary school in Pontiac. It's kind of a nice reuse of a building that was decaying a fair amount and probably would have eventually been knocked
The
down.
old Crowfoot Elementary?
Yeah, Crowfoot Elementary. And Crowfoot's kind of a historic name in Pontiac, of course. It's been a largely volunteer effort, and volunteers doing non-skilled labor like demolition in the building and so forth. It's been a largely individually funded, a lot of individually funded effort. The city of Pontiac has indeed come to the party recently. But it's a labor of love, to be honest, in terms of the volunteers that have put it together.
Now, when did you decide that we needed a museum in Pontiac, and how did that come to be?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. There's a gentleman that operates a small museum in Illinois that actually came to the city of Pontiac in 2009, proposed a museum to honoring Pontiacs and Oaklands. The city was in receivership in 2009, so
Yes, it was.
so more or less they sort of scurried him away and said, we don't need no museum, we got bigger fish that we got to fry. And so he's still interested and still involved, and he bumped into people. There's a real estate investor in Pontiac that's been very generous to us with both property and vehicles. And bumped into people like me that have a long history in the auto industry. And so about 2018 was when we really started getting some traction on this. And it took a good 5 years to get us to the point where we were ready to open doors. But we did that in May of 2024.
Now, you have how did you personally get involved in it? I mean, you say you have an automotive. Did you work with Pontiacs?
Yeah, I actually started my engineering career at Pontiac. I'm an automotive engineer and did product development for GM for 36 years. I've been around the auto industry for 45 years, did consulting after that and so forth. And so when I left GM, people knew I had a pretty deep appreciation for and interest in the history of Pontiac. So I actually did an in-house museum for GM for employees, and then bumped into these other folks that kind of wanted to do a public museum.
So now you're get it up. That must have been quite an undertaking to get the school, get the funding, put it all together. Where did you get the cars?
Easier prospect to get the collection than I thought. I silly me, I thought, getting the cars, how are we going to do that? There's an amazing amount of people that donate cars to a museum, and there's an amazing amount of individuals that they restored a car 30, 40 years ago. It's been sitting in their garage, and so they're willing to loan it to us indefinitely to show it. And sometimes, somebody passes away and the family just says, well, that's where it belongs, is at that museum. So the collection's been easier to come by than I would have guessed.
Well, as someone who had to say goodbye to his 30-year-old Chrysler LeBaron, believe me, I would have liked it to go to a museum.
Yeah.
But it would have been happy there. But yes, well, now you get the cars there. So now you've got the did you have to get a deal with the school district, or just
So the school, Pontiac school-aged children have downsized quite a bit over the last 20 years. And so Pontiac basically had to close a lot of schools, most in the late 2000s, 2008, 9, 10 kind of time frame. That's when this school closed, I think, in 2007.
Yeah.
Sat there empty and vandalized basically considerably for about 15 years. Was bought by this real estate investor that I referred to. And he eventually just decided he's got a real love for Pontiac history and just decided to donate the property to us. So we've got a very big building, and fortunately, most elementary schools would have been set up with hard-walled classrooms and would never work for a museum. But this was somebody's concept of an open environment school, and so it had movable partitions. Probably a really bad idea for noisy third graders and so forth.
Well, I went to high school in Midland, Michigan at Dow High, which is still there. The building's still there. It's in great shape, considering what we did to it. And it would be they had those movable pods or whatever, and you could put 3 classrooms together because that was the current thing. Unless you really were working hard to bang on them, and sometimes we were, it actually worked out. So I understand that. Well, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, once we were able to move out the partitions, take out the drop ceilings, it becomes a fairly ideal facility for a car museum.
Really?
And fortunately, the floors can support the weight of the cars. So.
Right. Is it just it's just on basically on slab or?
It actually is two-story at one end. It has a remarkable kind of a courtyard overlook from the upper story to the lower story. That's the end that we actually have not refurbed yet. We've only refurbed about half of the school.
Now, as far as cars, I want to just real quick because I want to ask, World War II, lots of stuff for the war effort. What do you guys have from World War II?
Yeah, a great question, because Pontiac's contribution to the arsenal of democracy is just remarkable. And I never appreciated this part until the last 5 years or so. I did a community lecture on the arsenal of democracy in Pontiac about a year ago. So three key products. One was the so-called deuce and a half, the CCKW. General Patton called it the true hero of World War II, which is kind of an interesting thing.
Well, it makes perfect sense because he could have gone straight to Berlin if they hadn't run out of supplies.
Right.
And then the Battle of the Bulge while they were,
Pontiac built 528,000 of these CCKW trucks. Just incredible.
528,000.
Yeah, I should say Pontiac built 360,000, but they engineered they engineered the other 200,000 that were built in St. Louis. And these were fundamentally what propelled the things like the Red Ball Express and so forth in Europe. And the trucks, another interesting aspect of history is the trucks stayed in Europe after the war, and that's what rebuilt Europe in the Marshall Plan, was all those trucks that were built in Pontiac. So that's the deuce and a half. Pontiac also built the Ducks. This is the amphibious truck that basically could go about 6 miles an hour in the water and 50 miles an hour on the roads. And so they were useful in Europe, particularly Italy, I think, and North Africa. In the Pacific, with all the islands and so forth that didn't have any harbors, they were tremendously useful. They're still useful today. People ride them in the Wisconsin Dells and Baltimore.
I saw one of those ducks. They're an amphibious, like you said, amphibious vehicle. They come in the water and then up on the shore, and the ramp comes down. I think that was it. I saw one. We actually rode on it, getting a tour of Boston Harbor.
Yeah, Boston has a fleet of
in
ducks.
Boston. Yeah. They were built for the war. They're still running.
Right. They're actually very expensive if you find a running one. The third product that I want to mention, though, is the Oerlikon gun, and that probably doesn't mean much to most people, but if you've seen World War II movies of the Pacific, and there's a guy in the aircraft carrier that's sitting in a bucket gunning with an anti-aircraft thing, those are Oerlikon guns. And Pontiac built 47,000 of those, which is by far the largest.
47,000?
Yeah, by far the largest share of them. And many historians say the Oerlikon gun is what won the Asia-Pacific War.
Well, it certainly helped. Here's a question. What is a whizzer?
Oh, whizzer motorbikes. That's another fun thing. So the whizzer motorbike was built from just before the war until 1966. About 250,000 of them in Pontiac. It's a motorized Schwinn bicycle, basically. They started out as motorized kits to go on a Schwinn bicycle. They evolved to where you could buy the fully integrated package, but I think it was the stuff of dreams for high school kids in the early 50s is to get a motorized whizzer.
A whizzer, I see, and then you graduate up to a Harley and all that.
Well, yeah, James Dean's first motorbike was a whizzer.
Get straight out of here. James, well, good. Now, when did they stop making cars in Pontiac?
1988 specifically, but so the Pontiac home plant existed from 1927 to 1982 as the home plant, built another 5 years of product that was not Pontiac home plant product. The Fiero ran from 84 to 88 at an assembly plant in the north side of Pontiac. And then trucks in Pontiac actually lasted till 2007. The Pontiac East plant closed in 2007.
So then they just started shutting it down and they didn't replace.
Yeah, unfortunately, the reality of I think a lot of people bemoan, we went from 5 assembly plants in the bounds of the city of Pontiac to none. And a lot of people bemoan that, obviously, from an employment standpoint. Orion Assembly, 3 miles north of the city, picked up a lot of that employment. And the reality of an automotive assembly plant today is it's 2 square miles It's 24/7 truck traffic. You need to have these just-in-time suppliers that are all around it, supplying parts. And it's just infeasible to do that in an urban environment anymore.
What was state of the art in 1921 or 25 is not state of the art
Right.
100 years ago. Later.
Exactly.
Well, that makes more sense. Now, what do you consider the most interesting thing at the museum?
People always ask me, what's your favorite vehicle here? And I'm like, that's like asking me what my favorite grandkid is. I love them all.
Well, I can tell you what my favorite grandkid is, but we only have one.
Yeah. I don't know. I differentiate it in the ones that are fun to drive. Like for instance, there's a LS7, which is a 427 V8 Solstice, which is a 505 horsepower thing and a 2,500-pound car. There's wonderful old stuff like a 1912 Oakland that is actually not this specific car, but a 1912 Oakland is pictured with President Taft motoring up Saginaw Street.
Get out of
in
here.
Pontiac.
It must have really great springs.
Yeah, really. There's some fun stories about when Taft came to visit. At least I'm told that they when they saw how big a man he was, they had to scramble to find a chair to fit him on the podium where he was, or the
Taft
dais
Taft was quite corpulent. Yes, he wasn't a bad president though, and he was a good Supreme Court Chief Justice. But
one of the crowd favorites typically come to the museum is a 1969 transit bus that we have. Interestingly enough, it's not as sexy as a GTO or anything like that, but we have one of those that is actually a very runnable bus out in the back of the museum.
Great. So have you driven a Whizzer?
I've not driven a Whizzer.
Oh,
I actually
man.
we put a Whizzer in we called it the centenarians in the Dodge and Motor Trend Roadkill Nights thing this summer. We're going to have a race of 200-year-old cars. And unfortunately, we broke one of the 100-year-old cars
Ouch.
right before the race, and so we had to sub the Whizzer in there. But it was a crowd pleaser.
Oh, I can imagine. Now we're going to run out of time, so real quick for people, what are the hours? What are the hours of your museum? People want to come, want to see it. Where do
Yeah.
they go? How do they do it?
Please come. Please talk to your friends about it. 250 West Pike, which is about 3 blocks west of Woodward and a block south of M59. It's in a historic neighborhood in Pontiac and nice place. And
Do you have a
dedicated
website?
Parking. Yes.
We'll put that up.
Pontiac Transportation Museum.org.
That's easy to remember.
It's pretty easy to find too, and you'll find us easy to find on Google Maps and so forth. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 10 to 6, and Sunday, 12 to 5.
So you're open on the weekends. Well,
Yeah.
Thursday through Sunday.
Right.
And what are the hours?
10 to 6 on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 12 to 5 on Sunday.
Uh-huh.
We're also open, I'll say, for events. Like if anybody wants a special place for a key anniversary party, a wedding, a key birthday, and so forth, people love it. We've done very successful events there.
I know that I belong to a club that went there on a special event. So Pontiac, really, it's Pontiac is Motown.
Yeah, my hope is that, beyond just operating a fun museum, this is bringing heritage tourism to Pontiac. We've had people from 19 foreign countries in the museum so far, and they didn't come because they were in Pontiac for the day. They came because they wanted to see that museum. And they stay in Pontiac hotels, they eat in Pontiac restaurants, and it's a good thing economically for the city.
Well, Pontiac it becomes a destination.
Right.
It fills a big gap because we have the Henry Ford, but that's Ford, and it's much more than Ford. Well, thank you for joining us, Terry Connelly, who's the board chair of the Pontiac Transportation Museum, and we've got the website up, and it's worth a visit. I haven't been there, but I promise you, I'm going to be going there. All right. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us here on Eye on Oakland.